I just peed all over the floor. Hi everyone, it's Mama Kaz and it is Tunnel Tuesday, so I'm going to get out in the garden. Sorry about you can hear the dehumidifier, I'm really sorry. But yeah, I'm going to get out in the garden now and we're going to do peas and beans today. So I'm going to show you how I grow my peas and beans and talk a little bit about growing peas and beans. And yeah, let's just get on with it. You see, it's still a bit shady over this side of the garden, but later on in the day it will get more sun, and later on in the year as well this side of the garden does get more sun. You see what a few weeds I need to pull out first, and some cat poo. Okay, so behind me here I've still got all my bamboo canes and pea netting from last year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up the supports, or like I did last year. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, just a row of cross bamboo canes with one across the top to support it, and then we'll plant the peas down either side. Okay, so this will do for now. As you can see, I've got my uprights, I've got my net, so all the little pea tendrils can cling onto the net and onto the bamboo canes, and they can grow upwards. So one really important thing to do before you plant your peas is to check which variety you have and see how tall they grow, because you want to make sure that your supports are tall enough to support the plant. So these ones that I have here, which the pack is all faded so I can't even see what variety they are, but it does say on here that they grow 70 centimetres tall, so this is easily going to be tall enough to support the plant. So let's plant them. So what we're going to do is just dig a wide, shallow trench all the way along where you want to plant your peas. Only needs to be a couple of centimetres deep. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pop the peas in the trench we've made in a sort of zigzag pattern. Each one sort of 2 to 3 centimetres apart. And we're going to do this all the way along the trench. I'm only going to plant half a row for now, and then in a couple of weeks I'll plant out the rest of the row, but I want to stagger the planting just so that they're not all growing and all producing at the same time. So I've done half this row here, and then I'll finish the row off in a few weeks. And the other side of this trellis is where I'm going to grow the beans. So we just want to cover them over gently. You could rake over, but my rake's too big to fit in this gap. So in the end I did decide to grow some broad beans. I'm only going to do a couple of plants though because no one else eats them. So I have just done 2 pots. I've popped 2 seeds in each pot and we'll see how they do, and I'll just pop those in the bed among the peas and the beans. So for the beans, I'm sowing them in pots first. I'm not putting them straight into the ground. It's still a bit chilly for beans. Where the peas quite like the cold, actually. They do quite well in the colder weather. In fact, if they get too hot, they'll stop producing. So peas quite like the cold, but beans like it a little bit warmer, a little bit sunnier. So I'm doing them in pots first in the polytunnel, and then when they're about sort of 3 sets of leaves tall, then I'll pop them out into the bed on the opposite side of the trellis to the peas. I've got my pots, decent sized pots, not little piddly ones. I like decent sized pots for beans because I like them to be able to grow a bit. These, I'm going to do 2 to a pot. So I'm just going to make a little hole, pop the beans in, and just cover them over. And while we're doing peas and beans, I'm going to do my sweet peas. I've got these little tiny pots here. I'm just going to pop a couple of seeds in each pot and pop them in the polytunnel. Okay, so once these are all in their pots, I'm just going to pop them in here in the polytunnel where they'll be nice and warm. Give them a really, really good water. You want to make sure they're really well soaked. So I've got my 6 pots of runner beans, there's 2 in each, so that should be plenty. Even if they don't all grow, there should be plenty just to go along that side of the trellis, and I might do some more in a couple of weeks' time, same as the peas, sort of stagger them. With the beans, they're not quite the same as the peas. It doesn't matter how high they grow, because what I do with the beans is when they reach the top of the trellis, I pinch the tops off so they don't get too straggly, they don't grow over the top, and then all the energy focuses down into the plant and into growing more beans. So you don't need to worry about that so much. This, I should have 12 runner bean plants if they all grow, 4 broad beans, and I actually only found 4 sweet pea seeds left. I must have used more than I thought last year, so I need to get some more of these, but there's 1 in each of these little pods, and when these start to grow, what I will do is just pop them out of here, pop them straight into their position. They're probably going to go into a big pot up against the wall. There's a trellis there, so that's that. If you're short on space and you don't want to grow massive tall climbing varieties, you can get bush beans, which are really good for filling gaps in the garden. They just are, as they say, bushes, little bush beans. But yeah, you can just grow those in the ground, and you don't need all the trellis and the string and the bamboo canes and things for those, and they're just as delicious. So when these beans grow to be about 3 sets of leaves tall, I will take them out the pots and I will plant them in the vegetable bed about 7 or 8 inches apart. Just space them out nicely, give them plenty of room to grow. If you overcrowd them, it's just going to be a mess. Gosh, it's so warm out there now. That's all there is to it for peas and beans, really. There's nothing complicated. I don't use any particularly special compost. I think with peas and beans you really don't need to, don't overcomplicate it. I know there are so many different types of composts and plant feeds on the market, but to be honest, if you're just growing for yourself and you're growing for fun and you're growing in your garden, there is really no need to complicate it. We bought a really good quality compost from a local place last year, filled the beds with it. We still had a load in the bathtub. Over the winter I chucked some veg scraps in there and some grass clippings and just kind of covered them over and let them mulch down. So you can do that if you want to, if you've got the space. But otherwise just a good quality, if you're doing pots, just a potting compost, anything you can buy in a garden centre really. Peas and beans really aren't that fussy, they're so easy to grow, which is what makes them a really, really good family sort of garden plant. You get loads of veg from them. If you space them properly and you water them well and you let them get plenty of sunlight, you'll get plenty of food from them. They're really, really good for kids to grow because they're a lot of fun. You can have competitions, see how high you can grow them, and they grow quite quickly as well, so they're really satisfying. But yeah, they really don't have to be complicated. You can grow beans in pots, you can grow peas in pots. If you had a massive container, you could do like a wigwam shape with your bamboo canes and just grow them around the pot. That would work. You could grow them in like a trough up against a fence if you've got a trellis, or you could like put some strings across a fence. Anything that the pea tendrils can cling onto and that you can tie the beans to if you need to. Yeah, really, really easy, and two of my absolute favourite things to grow. So I think the sort of key facts and tips would be, so for peas you want to plant them in a long, shallow trench in a zigzag pattern about 2 to 3 centimetres apart. Cover them over, stamp them down, give them a really good water, and then just leave them to grow. And then just make sure that they're really, really well supported. When they do start producing the pods, make sure you pick them regularly. Don't be tempted to leave them and wait till there's loads on there. Pick them as soon as you see them, pick them, because the more you pick, the more they will grow. That would be my one big pea tip, is pick as many as you can. For beans, as I said, so simple. You can grow them anywhere really, as long as you've got a deep enough pot to take the roots and you've got something to support. You can do them in grow bags, you can do them in pots, you can do them in veg beds, you can do them up a fence. If you haven't got the upward room, you can do a little bush variety, and they're great, they're delicious. And again, keep picking them, because the more you pick, the more they'll produce. If you're doing them up a cane, when they get tall, pick the tops off, and it will stop them putting their energy into growing upwards, and it will put all the energy into growing outwards and producing more flowers, more beans. The sweet peas, what I would have done if I'd had more seeds, put 3 or 4 in each little pot, let them all germinate, and then when they've grown to a decent size, don't separate them, pop them all as a cluster into their final spot, and then you'll get a nice cluster of flowers. Again, with the sweet peas, it's the same kind of thing. The more you pick, the more they'll produce. So when you get some beautiful flowers, pick them, put them in a vase indoors, and they'll grow more. And you can get some gorgeous scented varieties. But that's really it. There's nothing complicated about growing peas and beans at all. My biggest issue is going to be stopping the cat from digging them up. He's been using the vegetable bed as a litter tray. So I'm going to have to put some mesh or something over where they are. The other issue you might have is birds. So you can again put some fleece or some mesh or something, very fine mesh, over where you've grown your peas and beans, just to stop the birds and the mice nibbling your seedlings. You can do bird scarers. I'm a bit funny about bird scarers because we've got some lovely little birds in our garden. And I do like to have them there, But just around the vegetable bed I do things like windmills. They don't like the colours and the noises, and old CDs. You can hang old CDs from strings on a bamboo cane, and that helps to scare the birds away as well. But just a layer of mesh would be fine. It'll keep the pests out. If you've got any questions, pop them down below or drop me a message and I'll try to answer them. But that really is as simple as that. There is not much more to say. So I hope that was helpful in some way. Obviously I will keep you updated with the progress of the peas and beans as we go along. But yeah, so until next week, stay safe and go get your hands dirty. Bye!